Commander Mike Hawkins reporting the Gs that they experienced upon reentry. And as you heard, we are now out of that loss of signal portion, meaning the plasma has eroded away enough from the spacecraft upon reentry. And as you heard, we are now out of...
as soon as I heard the crew responding back. And, you know, one thing I did note, as soon as Mike turned on his comms, there was a lot of background noise, and that is sort of, you know, the after effects of Dragon's re-entry.
So this view again from the WB-57 aircraft.
Dragon SpaceX, a GPS is converged. Expect nominal altitude for drogue chute deploy.
Resilience copies. Nominal altitude for drogue deploy.
Crew Dragon Resilience now 30 kilometers over Earth. It's quite a quick drop over that 100 that we saw just a few minutes ago. And now we'll be looking for drogue parachute deploy within the next minute or so at 11:52 p.m. Pacific time, 6:52 GMT. Those two drogue chutes should deploy at 18,000 feet in altitude. Crew Dragon will be moving approximately 350 miles per hour.
Dragon SpaceX, recovery team reports visual.
Good news, we're at 20 kilometers, seats are rotating.
SpaceX copies on the seat rotation.
And the seats are rotating into the proper landing position. We saw them a little bit more reclined earlier, facing the top of the capsule. And now they are more forward facing towards that side hatch.
We also got confirmation that the recovery teams can also now see Dragon coming back.
Brace for drogues.
Copy, braced for drogues.
So we are waiting for confirmation that the drogue chutes have deployed. We are expecting them to deploy any minute now.
And it looks like those might be our drogue chutes.
Visual 2 chutes.
SpaceX from Resilience, we show good drogues.
SpaceX copies and concurs nominal descent right on 2 drogues.
Continuing to hear good news after good news. 2 drogue chutes have deployed. Everything looks nominal, and we're slowing the Dragon vehicle down. We are expecting the 4 main chutes to deploy within the next minute.
And those 4 drogue chutes. Oh, you can see them being pulled out now.
Visual on 4 mains.
And Resilience copies, and we see a nominal descent rate.
SpaceX copies and concurs nominal descent rate.
And this view coming from the WB-57, very clear image of those 4 main parachutes, slowing the vehicle down to what will be about 16 miles per hour prior to splashdown just off the coast of Panama City, Florida. If it were daylight, we would have an image of those 4 beautiful parachutes being orange and white. And still getting these incredible views, even though we are in a nighttime splashdown.
So we are waiting for visuals of splashdown. The Dragon 1 program had great success with water landing, with 20 successful splashdowns over the course of that program, 9 of which were carried out by flight-proven Dragon spacecrafts.
In space height, you've broken, but we show you just under 800 meters. Still good descent rate.
just under 800 meters from the Earth. That's about half of a mile. And we are tracking splashdown.
And 600 meters, and we're showing 10 meters per second on the descent rate, a little higher than nominal.
SpaceX copies.
And what a view we have here. Even though it's nighttime, we have some great visuals of Dragon there with its 4 main chutes deployed, slowly coming back to Earth. Splashdown is scheduled for just a few minutes from now.
400 meters.
Now just a quarter a mile away from splashdown. And that splashdown time is scheduled for 11:57 p.m. Pacific time.
And SpaceX, we show nominal descent rates, 200 meters, brace for splashdown.
SpaceX copies, brace for splashdown.
Seconds away from splashdown, everything nominal aboard Crew Dragon Resilience returning to Earth.
And there are the boats starting to chase after Dragon to begin their recovery operations as soon as Dragon lands. And I don't know if you can hear the applause
on splashdown.
But we have visual confirmation of the Crew 1 Resilience capsule.
From Resilience. This is excellent news. We are splashed down. The pyros have fired. We're water.
SpaceX copies and concurs. We do see mains cut as well.
So again, you heard the applause. The Crew 1 capsule has returned, and we have successful splashdown. The main chutes have also cut as well. The fast boats are now making their way towards the capsule to begin the recovery operations. Again, that first boat is going to start to inspect the capsule and make sure that there isn't any residual toxic fumes in the air.
Dragon, on behalf of NASA and the SpaceX teams, we welcome you back to planet Earth, and thanks for flying SpaceX. For those of you enrolled in our frequent flyer program, you have earned 68 million miles on this voyage.
And SpaceX Resilience, it is back on planet Earth, and we'll take those miles. Are they transferable?
And Dragon will have to refer you to our marketing department for that policy.
And we are in 1. That's 3.1 of 4.800.
And Resilience, please repeat last about 4.800.
Okay, we are at 3, and we show stable 1.
SpaceX copies, stable 1. Good news.
So a bit of levity from the crew and the core about the transferable mileage.
And that splashdown coming at 11:56 p.m. Pacific time, 6:56 GMT. We're hearing reports that the capsule is in stable 1 position, meaning it is upright. As we heard, those 4 main parachutes were cut, and those 2 fast boats will soon approach the vehicle. They will be able to, as we mentioned, sniff for those hypergol fuels, as well as attach buoys to the parachutes and make sure they are recovered. The teams have been ready and waiting about 3 nautical miles away, so it's going to take them around 20 minutes to make their way to Mike, Victor, Shannon, and Suichi inside Crew Dragon. And while the teams move in, we are continuing to watch this scene unfold and this view coming from Go Navigator, the recovery vessel on which we will see Dragon hoisted later.
And that was just so cool to see. The teams had visual of Dragon with his chutes deployed, coming back down to Earth, and then you saw the fast boats sort of just as fast as they could, heading over to Dragon, just to make sure that everything can happen as quickly as possible and make sure that the astronauts are safe.
And good news, the recovery vehicle has a go to approach the spacecraft.
Dragon SpaceX, we are go for recovery personnel to approach. Expect personnel alongside in about 1 minute.
And SpaceX from Dragon, that is great news.
And that comes right on time as well. Just 5 minutes after splashdown, those fast boats are going to be able to approach the capsule and put buoys on those parachutes. And the hypergol checks will continue. And eventually someone will help rig up the capsule to be picked up by the Go navigator once it has to go to approach the vehicle as well. And all of this action coming after undocking from the International Space Station at 5:35 p.m. Pacific time today, just 6.5 hours from them to board the Crew Dragon, or to depart on Crew Dragon and splash down back on Earth after almost 6 months in space.
And here's a aerial shot of those fast boats approaching
Dragon SpaceX comm check.
And SpaceX from Resilience, we're still reading you loud and clear.
Loud and clear as well. We just completed a minor comm configuration. Thanks.
You bet. And we see some lights outside. Looks like some people are getting close.
Affirmative. Quite the welcome home party.
So it looks like that first boat has already made it to the capsule. There are a number of other boats and recovery vessels standing by. And once we clear the area of, from any hypergolic vapors, they'll, move on to the next phases of recovery.
And some of those darker spaces you see there in the water are the parachutes that will be collected later on. But this view, yes, from the WB-57 aircraft that provided us with those infrared images as Dragon was still re-entering the Earth's atmosphere, and then all the way through splashdown as well. So you can see that second boat approaching those parachutes to attach some buoys. It really could not have been a more flawless journey home for Crew Dragon Resilience.
Yeah, we continue to see, nominal call after nominal call from
the Dragon SpaceX. We show hypergol sweeps and unfired ordnance checks nominal. Rigger should come aboard momentarily. Expect about 2-5 minutes until capsule lift. Stand by for PMC with SpaceX flight surgeon.
Okay, Resilience copies all. We're standing by.
The Corps there just said we are clear of any hypergols in the area, so we are starting to send the recovery vessel, and we'll start to hoist up Dragon in about 25 minutes. And then shortly after that, he mentioned PMC, which is the private medical conference. Again, the medical staff are one of the first people to talk to the folks inside the Dragon capsule. So, in about 30 minutes here, we should be seeing the hopefully the astronauts egress from the side hatch of the Dragon capsule.
We also heard them mention the rigger will be online, or will be on the capsule shortly. That's the one crew member we were discussing earlier, or one team member, I should say, that will climb on the capsule and begin rigging it for to be hoisted by the Go Navigator vessel. It will help place Crew Dragon into the Dragon nest aboard Go Navigator. Everything's still moving on timeline with this recovery tonight. The first splashdown of a NASA and SpaceX Crew capsule, and the first splashdown for NASA since 1968 with the return of the Apollo 8 astronauts.
And one thing to note, you can see the sheen of the ocean with those lights there, and the sea itself. That could have been mistaken for a beach, but we are in the middle of the ocean, and the seas are just as calm as they can be. Again, weather was something we were tracking, and we waved off splashdown a couple times this past week, but today's conditions seemed absolutely serene. There it is for landing and recovery operations. So it's just a great thing to see that they don't have to combat any type of inclement weather while they're already doing such important work here in the Gulf of Mexico.
So you can see some of those recovery vessels surrounding the capsule. And the crew members on board still just monitoring the status of the recovery. And as Andy mentioned, will participate in a private medical conference to report back on how they are feeling. And once they are brought on board, they'll have an opportunity to be checked out by medical personnel as well.
Seeing some activity of that fast boat around Crew Dragon. That's what's in the middle of the screen right now. There is a much larger recovery vessel nearby that will hoist up Dragon onto the back end of the ship. We're expecting that to happen in approximately 25 minutes.
And I can't tell exactly, but we may already have that person on Crew Dragon beginning to rig it in preparation for when Go Navigator can approach and it be attached to the ship and brought on board.
So this was the primary site that we landed on off the coast of Panama City in Florida. We did have an alternate site off the coast of Tampa. There was an equivalent amount of personnel and hardware and ships ready to perform the same type of recovery operations in the event that Dragon had to choose that site over the primary one. But things continuing to go smooth.
And we did get a report that the crew is feeling well inside the capsule, just what we wanted to hear. Of course, they will still have that private medical conference and they will still receive medical checkouts once they arrive on Go Navigator. But amazing preliminary news that the crew reports that they are feeling well. And that's quite a feat in itself, to be feeling well after 6 months in microgravity and to return to gravity. So great news all around tonight with the return of Crew Dragon Resilience. coming up on just about 15 minutes since we had splashdown today. This evening, that splashdown coming at 11:56 p.m. Pacific time, 6:56 GMT. And now you can, a little more clearly on the right-hand side of the capsule, see the person who is preparing it for their to be picked up by Go Navigator with that rigging system. And that's right on time as well.
And so this is the Resilience capsule. It flew for the first time in November of last year. And when it flew, it was pristine and white. And now we've got a little bit of toastiness on its side. And some people have described the re-entered capsule as a sort of a toasted marshmallow. And again, that is just from all the heat on re-entry. It is continuing to stay buoyant in the Gulf of Mexico. The Dragon vehicle itself is designed to be waterproof. And in the event that there is a breach, we do have some abilities to pump water into some bladders in the capsule to make sure that it stays buoyant for as long as possible. But everything continues to go well. We are now seeing a even better view of the rigger on top of the Dragon capsule, preparing it for hoisting later on in a few minutes here.
And that's a great picture. You can see just how calm the sea really is. That is the Gulf of Mexico.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing that it's that truly glassy, as we heard described earlier. A great view of the capsule now and the person preparing it to be hoisted on to Go Navigator. And as a reminder, we're going to remain live with you throughout this coverage up until the crew has been extracted from the vehicle. And this another view from Go Navigator. You can see the nest right there. That's where Crew Dragon will be placed once it has been hoisted onto the vessel.
And we have some people stepping in on the nest, and you can just see sort of the scale of that nest and really the boat. The Dragon capsule is, you know, throughout today we've seen it from a distance.
Resilience SpaceX recovery is proceeding nominally at this time. The recovery vessel is backing up towards the spacecraft and proceeding nominally.
And you can see Crew Dragon Resilience within the frame of that hoist mechanism on Go Navigator. The report going out to the crew that things continue to proceed nominally, and we can see that for ourselves as well. The Go Navigator will continue backing up to Crew Dragon until it's close enough to attach those lines and hoist the spacecraft onto the nest there at the bottom of your screen.
As we were saying earlier, the scale really doesn't really put into perspective until you start to put people around. The capsule itself is over 20,000 pounds, and so.
And Dragon SpaceX repeat call. We are proceeding nominally. Looks like the recovery vessel is about one boat length away, backing up towards the spacecraft.
That is great news, SpaceX. Looking forward to it.
continuing to proceed nominally. Go Navigator is backing up towards the Resilience capsule as the team of recovery personnel continue to get Dragon on top of the nest there that you see on screen.
And once Crew Dragon is lifted onto the nest, it will shortly afterward be pulled toward the egress platform, or the platform that allows them to exit. That platform is built up towards near the that forward hatch, and it should allow them to more easily exit the vehicle. Now been 20 minutes since tonight's splashdown. 6:56 GMT, 11:56 p.m. Pacific time. Mike Hopkins, Victor Glover, Shannon Walker, and Soichi Noguchi, all inside Crew Dragon, and recovery operations proceed nominally.
So we are now waiting excitedly for the recovery of our Dragon spacecraft with NASA astronauts Mike Hopkins, Victor Glover, Shannon Walker, and JAXA astronaut Soichi Noguchi inside. Dragon has already autonomously completed several steps to safe itself following splashdown. For those of you just joining us, the mission has gone smoothly so far. Dragon successfully splashed down in the Gulf of Mexico off the coast of Panama City, Florida at approximately 11:56 a.m. or p.m. Pacific time.
Approximately.
The Dragon SpaceX rigging is complete. Approximately 5 minutes until capsule lift.
Resilience copies, 5 minutes to lift.
And that's good news. They will continue to get closer to the spacecraft with rigging complete, meaning it will be able to be hoisted in 5 minutes from now. But approximately 6.5 hours ago, Dragon autonomously undocked from the International Space Station, completed a series of departure burns, jettisoned its trunk section, and performed its final burn, the deorbit burn, to place itself on a trajectory toward the Gulf of Mexico. Dragon successfully re-entered the Earth's atmosphere, followed by deployment of its parachutes to slow the spacecraft down to a gentle splashdown at just about 16 miles per hour. And we're now following the final part of Mike, Victor, Shannon, and Soichi's journey as Dragon is lifted out of the water and placed on the recovery boat.
Upon detection of landing, Dragon automatically releases the main parachutes to prevent wind from pulling the spacecraft. Dragon then automatically safes any pyrotechnics still present on the vehicle and may automatically perform additional minor system reconfigurations. The astronauts do remain seated and in their suits at this point, but the onboard air conditioning keeps temperatures in check inside of the spacecraft, and the communication systems on board remain powered so the crew can continue to communicate with ground.
SpaceX has 2 fast boats in the recovery fleet, which moved quickly to the splashdown point, and they have been joined by Go Navigator, which is the main recovery vessel in your screen now, and that has moved into position near the spacecraft. Those 2 fast boats have very specific roles. On first approach, it's immediately focused on safety inspection of the capsule integrity and checking for any presence of those hypergolic propellant vapors we've been talking about, ensuring that it is safe for Go Navigator to approach the Dragon spacecraft. Once the capsule is cleared for full approach, the team begins rigging the capsule for water recovery by the recovery ship, which we recently heard was completed. And the second fast boat is responsible for parachute recovery and also serves as a redundant boat to the first. And we saw that team member or on a jet ski helping to gather up the detached parachutes as well.
So it took about 10 minutes for the recovery crew to complete their safety checks. Once complete, the team will begin preparing Dragon to be lifted into the recovery vessel. And as part of this preparation, one member of the recovery team will climb up on top of the capsule and rig the Dragon spacecraft as they just did a few moments ago. And then from there, it will take less than an hour to raise Dragon to the recovery boat and remove the crew from the spacecraft. And then after that, after medical checkouts, the crew will return to land within 4 hours, either by boat or helicopter, depending on the landing site. So if no medical assistance is needed, the crew will depart for Houston.
And if you look very closely, you can see down to the bottom right of the capsule, there is one attachment on Crew Dragon. There will be multiple to keep and there's another on the left. There will be multiple to keep the spacecraft from swinging once it is hoisted out of the water. And it'll very quickly be placed on that Dragon nest waiting just below and at the bottom center of your screen. And as you can see, Crew Dragon now at multiple attachment points to that system on Go Navigator.
Dragon SpaceX, expect lift in 90 seconds.
Copy, 90 seconds, thanks, sir.
So about a minute and a half until we see Crew Dragon removed from the water. And there's still a team member up on the front of it. That's likely the same team member who helped rig the system and prepare it for attachment to the vessel. And as we mentioned earlier, this splashdown, a new record, breaking the old record for the longest crewed capsule in orbit from America, previously held by the final Skylab crew at 84 days, 1 hour and 15 minutes. And this crew returning with 168 days in space and doubling that previous record.
Dragon SpaceX, brace for capsule lift.
Go ahead, Sol. We cleared the lift.
Crew Dragon Resilience now out of the water and being prepared to be placed on that Dragon nest in the center of your screen at the bottom. And just an hour ago, this capsule had just completed the deorbit burn and was still in space, and now is being returned to Go Navigator. The first time for these crew members to be on Earth in almost 6 months.
Pretty much on the center of the screen, you can see the side hatch of the Dragon capsule. Later on today, that's where the astronauts will be egressing from. When they were attached to the International Space Station, they exited from the top hatch where the nose cone opens up.
And those two holes, essentially, that you see up toward the top of the nose cone above the...
Resilience, welcome aboard the recovery vessel. Recovery personnel are completing final checks. Stand by for translation of the egress platform in a couple minutes.
Resilience copies.
Those two holes aboard the Crew Dragon above the hatch and close to the nose cone, those are where the drogue parachutes were stored in that upper bulkhead. And there's near a deployable panel, so they're deployed by two drogue mortars, which are pyrotechnics fired to deploy the chutes. And those four main parachutes are also stored under deployable panels, but those are near the base of the spacecraft, so below that side hatch panel, and those were drawn out by the drogue chutes. Everything just absolutely flawless tonight with the recovery of Crew Dragon Resilience.
So before opening the hatch, the spacecraft's cabin pressure must be equalized with the outside environment. So once the hatch is open, that will be Mike, Victor, Shannon, and Soichi's first breath of fresh air since boarding Falcon 9 at the start of their mission back in November of last year.
And the next visual we are looking for is for Dragon to be pulled toward the egress platform on the Dragon nest. So they will move toward the platform that is up toward the side hatch. That'll allow for easier extraction, removal of the crew members. It's important to note that Mike, Victor, Shannon, and Soichi will be getting assistance from the recovery teams while exiting the capsule. And this is the same process for any returning long-duration crew members, as returning to a gravity environment can essentially wreak havoc with our vestibular system, which is responsible for maintaining our balance and motion. And safety is our #1 priority with this operation, as you've seen throughout not just today, but this entire mission. So you'll see all Mike, Victor, Shannon, and Soichi helped out of the capsule. We won't see them outside of the capsule today, but they will be assisted a few feet to the medical quarters aboard the boat. And we discussed earlier, if you've seen crews return on a Soyuz, it's the same process as when astronauts are carried from the capsule to waiting chairs and then carried into the nearby medical tent. This is also the period where any time-critical cargo can be removed from the spacecraft, with the remainder waiting until the ship is back in port. Once the ship and capsule return, the recovery team will perform additional inspections before loading Dragon onto a flatbed truck at the SpaceX facility in Cape Canaveral for post-processing.
So the crew just secured Dragon onto the recovery vessel, and now it's moving towards the platform where eventually the hatch will open up. We've got more personnel assisting with the recovery operations.
And that platform coming right below the side hatch, making it much easier for teams to help the crew egress or exit the vehicle. And this is the first time that this side hatch will be opened since launch day, November 15th. The hatch that's used on the International Space Station is that forward hatch underneath the nose cone, which is currently closed at the top of the vehicle. So as soon as this was sealed by SpaceX teams back in November, it has not been reopened since. And we see teams still preparing the capsule for that hatch opening.
There'll still be a few minutes before we have hatch opening. Again, we need to make sure that the cabin pressure is equalized to the ambient pressure outside. The team also performs a few checks to make sure that everything is a go before we open up that side hatch.
It's been about 35 minutes since Crew 1 splashdown. So you can see just how exponent this process already is, having the capsule on board and preparing to open up that side hatch. And all of the parachutes, both the drogues and the main chutes, have been located, and those will be recovered.
SpaceX resilience.
Go for SpaceX.
Hey, Solo, you guys are welcome to come on board with the cameras if you'd like.
SpaceX copies and work.
And Solo, you got one more call before we wrap things up, is that correct?
Affirmative. We have a few technicians just doing some work on the exterior of the hatch. We should be ready to open up shortly, we hope.
Copy.
Now the crew members will not ride this boat all the way back to shore. They will board a helicopter, and that helicopter will take them back to Pensacola, and waiting there will be a NASA plane to bring them back to Houston.
Yeah, it's quite surreal that about 7 hours ago, this capsule was traveling at over...
And Dragon, stand by for side hatch opening and egress.
Okay, Solo, we are standing by. Hey, and while I'm thinking about it, Solo, for SpaceX and the NASA teams, on behalf of Crew 1 and our families, we just want to say thank you. We want to say thank you for this amazing vehicle resilience. We said it before the mission, and I'm going to say it again here afterwards. It's amazing what can be accomplished when people come together. So finally, I'd just like to say, quite frankly, you all are changing the world. Congratulations. It's great to be back.
And Hopper, thanks so much. You've got a round of applause here in Mission Control. And from all of us, it's truly been epic working with your team from early development through splashdown of the world's first long-duration space flight, human space flight. Your crew is really a tribute to Resilience's name. We wish you all happy reunions with your families and loved ones. And thanks again for flying SpaceX.
Thank you, Solo. Thank you all.
So we had some kind words exchanged from the Corps and Mike Hopkins, the commander. The hatch is now open. We also heard some applause at Mission Control here in SpaceX. Just a tremendous amount of dedication that has gone into this particular mission over the last couple of years. And so we're really seeing the fruits of the labor now, really ending the mission. And, you know, just 7 hours ago, this capsule was traveling at over 17,000 miles an hour in space, docked to the International Space Station. And now it's safely secured back on Earth, and we have the hatch open.
And that hatch open for the first time, as we mentioned, since launch day, November 15th, 2020. These astronauts completing the first long-duration commercial crew mission, and now holding the record for the longest time in space by an American crewed capsule, returning with 168 days. And with that side hatch being open, as we discussed, the first people to speak with Mike, Victor, Shannon, and Soichi are the medical team. And as we heard earlier, the crew did report that they were feeling well, but still important to get checked out after spending 6 months in space. They will eventually be removed from the capsule and put on stretchers to taken to some additional medical checks. We're coming up on 40 minutes since splashdown. That capsule splashing down at 6:56 GMT, 11:56 p.m. Pacific time. Returning Crew 1 aboard Crew Dragon Resilience. That side hatch now open. Crew members speaking with medical personnel and preparing for egress. Everything was on the timeline for Crew Dragon today, undocking at 5:35 p.m. Pacific time, completing those 4 departure burns, as well as nose cone, or as claw separation and trunk jettison. We had some amazing views from the International Space Station along the way. That deorbit burn lasting the scheduled 16.5 minutes, slowing down Crew Dragon just enough to drop them out of Earth's orbit, begin their re-entry into the atmosphere. We saw both drogue parachutes deploy nominally, followed by 4 good main parachutes and a soft splashdown as scheduled in the Gulf of Mexico off the coast of Panama City, Florida at 11:56 p.m. Pacific time, 6:56 GMT.
And after splashdown, we saw the 2 fast boats approaching the vehicle. The first one made sure the area was safe for approach, and then one of the riggers climbed on top of the capsule and started preparing it for the eventual hoist and lift onto the boat that is on screen right now, Go Navigator. Really, as soon as we got visuals of Dragon, those boats really headed over there as fast as they could and tried to expedite the process. And now we're here. The capsule is on the boat. It's secured. Our hatch is open, and we have some personnel tending to the astronauts right now and make sure everything is A-OK after what really has been a picture-perfect mission so far.
The crew remains on the timeline to egress or exit Dragon in under an hour after splashdown. So they still have about 20 minutes until we reach, or 18 minutes until we reach that hour mark, and we are perfectly on schedule for the hatch to have been opened at its time. And we just saw one of those tablets being removed that the crew members were using to track the mission throughout the day. Just as it takes a little while to get crew members strapped in properly from, well, preparing for launch, we see the same thing whenever they come home. We want to make sure that everything is done in an orderly fashion and safely for our 4 astronauts.
Seems like we're removing a few parts to make room for the astronauts to egress.
And that looked like those footrests, essentially. I'm not sure the best thing to call them. I can't think of it right now. You can see those two windows on either side of the hatch. That's what gave the astronauts a view. Earlier, they said they had a great view of the International Space Station, and even upon launch day, they gave us some views as they were heading to the space station. So those are their two windows that they've been able to look out during their journey aboard this spacecraft.
For those just joining us, on screen right now is the Crew 1 capsule Resilience. It has returned from space. We are on sort of the back end of the recovery vessel, Go Navigator, and here is, I think that's Mike Hopkins, the commander. He seems very excited.
Feeling pretty good after 6 months in space.
This is just excellent to see the astronauts coming out of the Dragon vehicle. So we're just off the coast of Panama City, Florida, and the hatch has been opened. There was some materials that were removed. It looks like the seat rests were removed, or the footrests were removed. And now we just saw the commander, Mike Hopkins, exit the vehicle, do a little bit of a dance.
As we mentioned, these crew members will be making their way over to some medical checks. Standard procedure for us when we have crew members returning from long-duration spaceflight, or any spaceflight really, when we are having crew members return on a Soyuz spacecraft in Kazakhstan. There is a medical tent nearby, and we carry those crew members from the spacecraft to the medical tent for their checkouts. So even though the crew has reported they're feeling good, and it certainly looked like Mike Hopkins was feeling good, they will still get those standard medical checks before boarding a helicopter later this evening to take them back to shore. And once they are on land in Florida, they will board a NASA plane to bring them back to Ellington Field in Houston, Texas, where they can be reunited with friends and family for the first time in almost 6 months.
Yeah, in the bottom left of your screen, there is a stretcher there. Again, that is standard. Returning back to Earth after such a long duration in microgravity has, it can do things to your body. So
those two SpaceX team members preparing to help out the next crew member. And that is NASA astronaut Victor Glover.
And this is a view of Mission Control in Hawthorne. Continuing to support the mission. Yeah, we just saw Mike Hopkins exit the vehicle. Again, things are going pretty nominally. The vehicle had a splashdown at approximately 11:56 p.m. Pacific time. And shortly after that, the recovery team began their operations. We sent fast boats out there to start to sniff out the hypergalls and make sure there wasn't any toxic vapors in the air. Began rigging the boat and eventually getting the Dragon capsule on top of the Go Navigator recovery vessel.
And we saw Mike Hopkins out of the spacecraft first. He did a little dance for us to show us just how good he felt. And then followed by Victor Glover. Victor Glover returning from his first space flight. He was really the newbie on this trip, I guess you could say. He served as pilot of Crew 1, Crew Dragon Resilience. So he was the next out of the capsule. And we are still awaiting 2 more crew members to be removed from the capsule. And they will be checked out by those medical teams on board the ship. But as we heard earlier, they reported that they were feeling well.
Yeah, the 2 mission specialists that we haven't seen yet are Shannon Walker and Soichi Noguchi, who sat sort of on the ends of the seats inside the vehicle. Yeah, pretty stellar return home today, only taking about 6.5 hours from undocking to splashdown. And you know, throughout the mission today, we had really great feedback about some nominal departure burns. We did a prop wasting burn where we shed some unnecessary propellant from the vehicle to lighten the load of the Dragon spacecraft. And then we started to prepare for deorbit. So we had the claw retraction or separation. That is an umbilical that ties telemetry, data, and power from the capsule to the trunk. So we separated that. Then we also jettisoned the trunk, shedding a bit more weight. And then finally, we had our deorbit burn, which took about 16 minutes. And then we got some fantastic footage of Dragon returning back through the atmosphere. And then eventually, when it deployed its chutes, it was definitely a sight to see.
And we saw all of those chutes deploy nominally, first 2 drogue chutes that slowed the spacecraft down to about 119 miles per hour. Those 4 main chutes following and slowing the spacecraft down to about 16 miles per hour for a much softer splashdown. And that splashdown coming right on time at 11:56 p.m. Pacific time, 6:56 GMT. So we have heard that Shannon Walker is now outside of the Crew Dragon Resilience capsule, leaving Soichi Noguchi to be the last crew member extracted today. And as we mentioned, they will all get medical checkouts ahead of heading back to land.
Yeah, so quite a speedy operations to, you know, get the capsule back onto the boat and open up the hatch. So again, we, Mike, Victor, and Shannon have exited the vehicle, and we are waiting on Soichi, confirmation that Soichi is also going to exit. And again, they are, you know, going to be checked out to make sure everything's okay, and then eventually make their way back towards Houston, where hopefully they can reunite with their families soon.
And we expect them to be back in Houston by the early hours of tomorrow morning, hopefully. Let's see here. They should return to Houston. I can't find the exact timeline just at this moment, but they will board a NASA jet once they return to land in Florida, that helicopter taking them from Go Navigator to Florida, and then the NASA plane taking them back to Ellington Field. So it's quite a speedy recovery process. You know, when we land crew members in Kazakhstan, we are able to get them out of the vehicle very quickly as well, because it is on land, so it's easier to approach and to maneuver around. They get medical checks as well, and then they board a NASA plane or the NASA astronauts, I should say, board a NASA plane and return to Houston. But that flight time is just so much longer, simply because it's on the other side of the world. So quite different for these astronauts to be reunited with their families just very shortly after landing.
Yeah, and one thing that certainly helped the speedy recovery options today was the weather. We got good news that wind speed was super low, and the waves themselves were also very, very small. If you've been following along, the original departure date was supposed to be on the 28th, but we waived that due to weather. And then we also waived the attempt on the 30th, but today, conditions definitely seem ideal, and it definitely paid today, as after the capsule had landed. The seas were as calm as I've ever seen them, making the trip for the fast boats to the capsule that much smoother.
And And good news, Soichi Noguchi has egressed the vehicle as well. So now that Mike, Victor, Shannon, and Soichi are safely back home on Earth and getting checked out by the NASA medical team, we are going to wrap up our live coverage of their historic return. This all kicked off on November 15th, 2020 from historic launch pad 39A at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. After a successful liftoff and separation from Falcon 9, Mike, Victor, Shannon, and Soichi made a 27-hour flight on board Dragon to the International Space Station. Since arriving at the space station, they spent almost 6 months as members of Expedition 6465, executing science experiments, spacewalks, and repairs while aboard the orbiting laboratory.
Their journey home today began just hours ago, Saturday, May 1st, when they closed the hatch to Dragon and undocked hours later at 5:35 p.m. Pacific time. We then jettisoned Dragon's trunk and performed our final on-orbit maneuver, the deorbit burn, at approximately 11:03 p.m. Pacific time to send Dragon on the path home. The spacecraft re-entered the Earth's atmosphere and slowed its descent with successful deployments of the 2 drogue parachutes and 4 main chutes, with the final splashdown occurring off the coast of Panama City, Florida at 11:57 p.m. Pacific time. Following that successful splashdown, we saw SpaceX recovery experts move in and prepare Dragon resilience for its lift onto the recovery vessel. And just a little less than an hour following splashdown, we saw Mike, Victor, Shannon, and Soichi, safely exit the Dragon capsule.
Next up, they will catch a helicopter flight back to shore, where they will transfer to the waiting NASA plane for the short flight back to Houston, where they will be reunited with families to bring an end to this flight. We can't express what an honor and a privilege it has been to share their journey with all of you as we continue this new era in human spaceflight. In just the last week, we saw 4 astronauts fly to station to begin their mission, and now 4 more return to Earth to successfully complete another.
So SpaceX and NASA are already looking forward to the next rotation when Crew 2 comes home and Crew 3 launches, all of which is currently targeted for October of this year. And at that time, we'll once again have a direct handover with 11 people on board the station for a short duration as we continue this regular cadence of flying astronauts on SpaceX rockets from Pad 39A at Kennedy Space Center. Again, thank you for tuning in for the culmination of Crew 1, a 6-month mission that has been years in the making. All of us here at SpaceX and NASA are excited to reunite these 4 astronauts with their families. We'll continue to work hard to ensure future astronauts' safety and mission success. So be sure to follow SpaceX and NASA online, as well as the social media for updates on crew and cargo flights to and from the International Space Station.
And we'll continue to share the progress of Mike, Victor, Shannon, and Soichi's trip back to Houston on social media. We are also awaiting a briefing including NASA, SpaceX, and JAXA leadership. That's coming up at 2 a.m. Pacific time, 5 a.m. Eastern time. So we have to say thank you one more time again for tuning in and cheering on Mike, Victor, Shannon, and Soichi as they return home. And we'll see you next time when we once again are sending astronauts on American rockets and American spacecraft from American soil. See you next time.